are these people?
Here's the crazy thing. I started going over this, and I had a couple of stories that I had thrown into a folder that I wanted to look at. And I'm reading this thing, and I'm like, this is a pretty crazy article. But at the same time, I guess we did this last time, and I don't even remember it because I guess my brain was so fried and tied up in Justice for Aspen stuff at the moment that covering this in the lightning round of the last episode, I want to go over it again because I think a lot of people probably missed it, and I definitely did, even though I actually read it once, which is that there was an actual joint congressional investigation that was launched in response specifically to ProPublica's revelations about detained Americans. Okay, 170 plus Americans have been arrested and detained by ICE. Most of them are released without charges, which is even worse. All right, so here we've got senators, House members, even a mayor, I think it was Brandon Johnson, expressed outrage and demanded accountability after our investigation detailed how at least 170 citizens have been held by immigration agents this year. The last I knew, that was illegal. But I guess nothing is illegal at this point, especially if they hold you without charges. They can legally, I guess, detain you and hold you. But, man, it's problematic. And, of course, almost all of them are Latino. Go figure. So we've got a racist Customs, Border Patrol, ICE. Okay, this was from October 21st. So this was already a couple of weeks old. And of course, this was in the middle of the shutdown. So nothing was really going on because these guys were barely showing up to work to begin with. And then not even voting until today to sell us out and reopen the government and give us nothing in return. The Democrats in the House and Senate announced plans for a wide-ranging investigation into immigration agents' detention of citizens after a ProPublica story found that more than 170 Americans have been held by immigration officials this year. Minority leaders of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee and the Senate's Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations said that the joint investigation into the detention of U.S. citizens and other allegations of misconduct by immigration agents would include a hearing in L.A. Now, the only thing I do see here is that this is being run by Democrats, which means that this is going to be highly partisan, and the people who are in charge aren't even really going to be involved. So this is, okay, this is like window dressing in a way to kind of expose it, but accomplish nothing. All right, over 170 citizens have been arrested. Why? Because they look like me, because they're of Latino origin, or because they're suspected to not be a U.S. citizen, or because they are suspected of crimes that they have not committed. All right, that's Robert Garcia, and Karen Bass. We all know Karen Bass is problematic. She's running for her life effectively politically right now because of what happened with the wildfires earlier this year and her taking her jaunt, I think it was to Uganda, while that thing was happening. Garcia said the investigators are demanding all records and documents showing how U.S. citizens are treated by immigration officials in L.A. and around the country. I think we know the answer to that already. An investigation isn't going to reveal any more than we know already. We want to understand what they're doing in our neighborhoods, how it's being funded. You're funding it, you idiots. You gave ICE all that fucking money the last couple of years. What do you mean? Our investigation found that at least 50 citizens have been detained based on questions about their citizenship as of October 5th. They were almost all Latino. What a surprise. Roughly 130 others have been detained after raids or protests on allegations of assaulting officers or interfering with arrests. Many of those cases have wilted under scrutiny. What's happening, honestly, is that a lot of people are chasing after ICE agents in these cities and honking their horns after them to let people know that ICE agents are coming into their city and into their neighborhood and to warn them. And ICE doesn't like that because that means fewer arrests for ICE. And we know from Stephen Miller's thing months ago, they have a 3,000 arrest per day quota nationwide. ProPublica says, we found Americans have been dragged, tackled, beaten, tased, and shot by immigration agents. American citizens. At least 24 citizens have reported being held for at least a day without access to a phone or a lawyer. They don't give a shit. This is modern day Gestapo stuff. Bass and Garcia don't care about them, but they said the mistreatment of citizens has come amid the arrests of immigrants reporting for check-ins and immigration court. We've seen this. We've reported on it. And the administration's repeated blocking of congressional attempts to visit and conduct oversight in federal detention facilities like the one in LA and the one in Newark and the one in Florida. They've tried to get into these places often, and they're told they don't have jurisdiction and they're not allowed to go. Quote, it's important that we say today what's happening to undocumented residents is also happening to U.S. citizens, which means that this can happen to anyone, to all of us at any period of time. Yes, Karen, that's correct, Karen. Former Congresswoman Karen, by the way. If she was sitting in Congress, she'd have been one of those people that was voting no, by the way, to reopen the government. Their article also has prompted members of Congress to write to DHS, which they'll get a strongly worded letter. In one letter sent to Kristi Noem, Garcia and Senator Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut said citizens in cities like LA have borne the brunt of the administration's aggressive immigration enforcement. Not only cities, but specifically blue cities. And that was something that even my father last week when I was down in Florida with him pointed out, is that notice that the top crime cities are not where they're sending the ICE. They're sending it into the blue cities. This is completely punitive. Totally agree. Both the impact of these arrests has not been evenly distributed across the country, and cities like Chicago, Portland, D.C., and L.A. have been targeted. Troublingly, the pattern of U.S. citizen arrests coincides with an alarming increase in racial profiling, particularly of Latinos, which has been well documented in L.A. Homeland Security has not replied to previous letters. What a shock. Why should they? There's no consequences for not replying. There's been no congressional subpoena. There's been nothing. Asked about the concerns from elected leaders, DHS spokesperson rejected claims that immigration agents have been engaging in racial profiling. Here comes the gaslight. Ready? She said in a statement to ProPublica that a temporary ruling by the Supreme Court in September had vindicated the administration, whether Mayor Bass or Rep. Garcia liked it or not. Really? DHS enforces political immigration law without fear, favor, or prejudice. We'll hear all about that in a few minutes. Claims by the media, agitators, and sanctuary politicians like Mayor Bass and Rep. Garcia that ICE is targeting U.S. citizens, making unconstitutional arrests, and trampling on civil liberties are false. That's why they just took Homeland Security away from the people that were running it and handed it to Border Patrol, right? We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. That slid by most people without them knowing about it at all. White House Deputy Press Secretary Abigail Jackson told ProPublica in an email that unhinged rhetoric from activists and Democrat politicians was responsible for an increase in assaults on ICE officers. Not ICE officers actually assaulting citizens, but the opposite. And then, of course, you've got Chief Nazi himself, Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. He derides Karen Bass's press conferences. Abject lies. Like one of the biggest liars in the country. Gaslighting Nazi. Sure. Admit it. Violent leftists have been arrested and charged with illegally obstructing federal law enforcement. A felony. Dude, where are your pearls? Look at that pearl clutching. Let that sink in. Open borders, Democrats. Oh my God. Have incited leftists to violently attack ICE. I swear I'm waiting for it to fucking burst into tears. What a pussy. Of the cases we tracked through October 5th, we found again nearly 50 instances where charges have never been filed or the cases were dismissed. Well, if they committed a crime, I would guess that you would have found something to charge them with, wouldn't you? Our count found at least 8 citizens have pleaded guilty, mostly to misdemeanors, including for failing to follow orders. Others are still facing charges for more serious accusations, including for allegedly ramming an agent's car. The driver pleaded not guilty, and the footage that we saw was the exact opposite. The ICE agent hit them and then dragged them out of their own car. One account did not count citizens arrested later, all right, after some sort of judicial process, or those detained by local law enforcement or the National Guard. That also is a bunch of people. That included cases of some people charged with serious crimes like throwing rocks, like the guy in LA, or tossing a flare to start a fire. But those are like anecdotal, single one-off incidents. That's not happening in every city. People aren't tossing flares at Homeland Security agents everywhere. That's nonsense. Again, they're using one-off things to justify the systemic nonsense that's happening. Okay, this is bullshit. So not only that, and I know that, so that's Nicole Foy over at ProPublica. By the way, ProPublica won the Pulitzer Prize for Outstanding Independent Investigative Journalism this year. Good on them. But I also wanted to go to Indie Media Award honoree Left Voice, and I have a sound for that. Okay, now, again, I know that our friend Kit over at Heartlands Media covered this earlier in the week, and I wasn't really around this week to see this, but when I saw the video, I'm like, oh my God, we've got to talk about this. ICE agents detain a daycare teacher in Chicago. And again, I'm guessing some of you probably saw this, but I like this article from M. Carlstad and Gwen Lee over again at Left Voice. On Wednesday morning in Chicago, a nightmare scenario played out when ICE agents arrived at Rayito de Sol Spanish Immersion Early Learning Center in North Center neighborhood and ripped a daycare teacher from her workplace in front of parents and their children. Why? Parents who arrived around the same time to drop their kids off witnessed and filmed much of the abduction. The upsetting footage shows two ICE agents in masks, of course, and police vests taking the teacher by force out of the school building as she struggles, visibly terrified. Her screams are audible from within the building as they force her out the door and handcuff her against a gray sedan. According to Chicago Alderman Matt Martin, who viewed security camera footage from the daycare, the ICE agents also entered and searched the daycare building with guns, while teachers and young students were present. That's illegal. According to parents, the teacher normally works in an infant classroom. In some video footage, the teacher can be heard telling the ICE agents in Spanish that she has papers. Indeed, she's an asylum seeker with a valid work permit. Her coworkers and community members describe the attack as horrifying, surreal, and nightmarish. Parents and children alike were left in shock and tears. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson condemned the abduction and criticized ICE's use of force against this teacher and other immigrants and protesters in Chicago. He's right to do so, but a sharp contradiction lies behind his words, because as mayor, he's leader of a police department that works in parallel with ICE to terrorize people of color in Chicago and repress protests. Johnson, of course, used to be a teacher himself and a member of the Chicago Teachers Union, a union which now must take up the fight to demand this teacher's release and to defend all educators as well as students from ICE. Fuck ICE. As of Thursday, the teacher was believed to be held at the Broadview ICE detention facility, which, by the way, is one of the worst in the country, raising concerns for her safety among the daycare's community. Again, the site has been described as dire and disgusting due to poor sanitation, and detainees are regularly denied access to food and medical care. Organizers, parents, and other Chicagoans protested there on Thursday and were denied access to speak with the teacher. She might not even be there. They might have moved her to Louisiana for all we know at this point. They move people around the country from facility to facility without telling anybody, and they're disappearing people, and that's part of the plan. Since Trump's inauguration, ICE agents have abducted multiple students here in New York City and have surveilled, terrorized, and invaded other cities even more aggressively. All over the country, there are instances of agents in unmarked vehicles wearing civilian clothes with faces covered, separating children from their parents, or beating and arresting people, sometimes citizens, who happen to look like they could be immigrants, and their skin is usually brown. The ongoing government shutdown adds a new level of absurdity to the horror of such ICE attacks. While funding for SNAP benefits sits frozen and blocked from people's EBT cards, causing families to go hungry, ICE agents are still being paid to terrorize them at work and school. Hey, thanks. Appreciate that, guys. In many cases like LA and a recent ICE arrest in Detroit, these attacks have been met with fierce and organized resistance by communities. When masked ICE agents targeted a group of men in Detroit, members of the Detroit People's Assembly intervened to try to bring the men to safety after the agents abducted one of the men by smashing a car window and dragging him out of it through the broken fucking glass. In another instance, directly involving educators, CTU teachers formed sanctuary teams this year to monitor any potential threats against undocumented students. This comes after many years of fighting for immigrant defense by CTU workers. Students and teachers have the right to free, safe, and accessible learning communities, regardless of their immigration status. This has been ruled on by the Supreme fucking Court. They don't care. Because of this, it's essential that we defend them from these racist attacks by ICE, which Trump is transforming into his own personal police force. Additionally, the fact that Democrats and Republicans are paying ICE to continue its racist rampages while 42 million people lost SNAP benefits is a reminder that we can't count on capitalist politicians nor their biased court system to defend our immigrant coworkers and students. Still, we know from the No Kings marches of the summer and fall, attended by millions, useless, and the recent rejection of Trump's politics in the 2025 elections, yay, that people are prepared and energized to fight back, and perhaps in more powerful ways than the ballot box. I sure hope so, because that didn't do very much. Because of attacks like the one on Wednesday, teachers are on the front lines of this fight and may have already taken it up. This is evident from the CTU's sanctuary teams, the protests led in recent years by the United Teachers of LA, and the ongoing education worker organizing happening in New York City. As unionized teachers have said many times, their working conditions are their students' learning conditions. Organizing to defend our immigrant coworkers directly from our workplaces is essential. And our unions can and must play a leading role in organizing that fight back. I wouldn't count on them, though. I think that they need to organize themselves on top of that. I did want to somewhere. Here's the video footage. Ooh, I'm not going to do that, guys. I'm not going to do that. Sorry. I'm not going to do that. Plus, it's CBS anyway. So, we see what ICE is doing, right? Well, it wasn't just in Chicago either. All right, here's another one in Oregon. ICE took a green card holder leaving for work just weeks after his baby's birth. Because the punishment is the process, and it's the whole point. Okay, it's so disgusting. Let me make this a little bigger. Again, dissentinbloom.substack.com. Check it out. He was featured also on the Justice for Aspen live stream. If you did not see that, by all means, check it out. As she said, picture this. Sarah had just given birth 3 weeks ago. I remember when my kid was 3 weeks old. All right. Her body still healing, swollen, eyes heavy from the sleeplessness that comes with a newborn's cries. This was their third boy, and though her hands were going to be full, her heart had never felt fuller. Aw. It was fall in Oregon. The red and orange and yellow leaves fell from outside. Very descriptive. Children were preparing for Halloween, and her apartment smelled of coffee and milk and baby lotion and baby formula, probably. All right. Her husband, lovingly called Yomi, was heading back to work today. All right. He didn't want to leave her side yet, not while she was still sore, still between the beauty of their new child and the ache of recovery. But the rent was due in a few days, and the bills don't pause for love or birth. And in America, the landlord and the light company don't care if you just brought life into the world, and apparently neither does ICE, because on October 26th, Abayomi Daramola was taken from his wife and children, taken by masked men as he left for work that day. Fucking gross. See, when Yomi left, it was just another morning. Two rambunctious little boys excited for their new brother. The new baby's soft breath on her chest, that unsaid feeling that everything was going to be okay, but by afternoon, everything that they built, 10 years of home, family, safety, collapsed in the space between a knock at the door and a click of handcuffs. During the arrest, Sarah said one of the agents barely looked at her. He just muttered that her husband was being taken. There was no explanation, no mercy, and then they were gone. He didn't even have a chance to show them that he was legal. They didn't seem to care either way because, again, they have a 3,000 arrests per day quota. So even if they arrest him, they can always just let him go, but they met their quota and they're not going to get in trouble for the day. Yomi had lived here for 10 years. He came from Nigeria, built a life, earned his green card, followed every rule this country told him would keep him safe. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't illegal. He belonged here. ICE coming for their family was likely the last thing on their mind. I'm sure seeing on the news, it's messing him up and he's wondering, are they going to come for me? And they did. Yet in that moment, none of it mattered. Sarah left standing in the doorway holding their baby, watching the only world she knew collapse. A father taken before his newborn would even recognize his face or know that this ever happened. And taken from two little boys who had never known life without their daddy. I mean, again, I got 3 little kids. This kills me. So where is Yomi now? Well, on November 3rd, an advocate posted an update to the family's GoFundMe. In the span of just 3 days, remember I talked about how they moved that teacher? He was moved between 4 different detention centers. Every transfer meant new chains on his wrists and ankles, new officers, new walls that smelled of bleach and metal. He reported being shackled the entire time. Wrists sore where the metal rubbed against his skin. His legs stiff from sitting in the same position for hours. What did he do? They wouldn't let him shower. They wouldn't even let him use a bathroom. For more than 72 hours, he sat in chains, sweating, aching, humiliated. Must have been sitting in his own piss and shit. The air was thick and sour. His clothes clung to him. Every mile of that journey stripped away another layer of his dignity, again, which was the point. He tried not to think about home. That's what tries to break them. About Sarah, the baby, the boys, because the thought of them made the walls feel smaller, I can imagine. This was a man who'd done everything right, who followed every rule, and yet here he was, treated like something less than human. That's the baby. But there's beauty in the darkest of times. And in the days since Yomi's arrest, the community has rallied around Sarah. Great. Thousands of dollars have been donated to her GoFundMe, enough for her to pay the rent and secure a short period of postpartum doula care to help her through long sleepless nights without her kids. Yeah, great. Thanks for that. It's great, but that she doesn't have to do that alone. But that small consolation for now, she and the kids have a place to stay, a little stability, and in the chaos that ICE left behind, which again, I think they want people to end up homeless out of this, evicted and living in their car on the streets or who knows where. They're fighting to free him, to get this man back to his family. Why? Here's the part that hurts to write. By early November, the average person in ICE detention was being held for roughly 7 weeks How much is that costing us as a society on top of the moral cost, but just the fucking financial cost? But people who fight their cases like Yomi is, they are often locked up far longer, sometimes many months or even a year or more. The people who get out earlier are the ones who self-deport to get away from the horrible conditions inside these detention centers. Again, the punishment is the point, which is the goal. Kristi Noem has said on record, the dog murderer, several times that the goal is to make ICE detention so cruel, so inhumane, and so torturous that immigrations would rather just go back to the places where they risk life and limb than stay and be abused. How is she not behind bars right now? But he is, because he's from Nigeria, and despite being a permanent resident with a green card, he's still going to miss the small irreplaceable things that mark a baby's second month of life. These are the ordinary miracles that teach a child safety and bonding, and they're happening without him. Again, by intent. Look at what happened to Mahmoud Khalil. And if this drags on, as it so often does, his baby could grow up without knowing his voice, his scent, his touch. When he finally walks through the door, he won't be daddy. He'll be a stranger with familiar eyes, trying to bond with a child who's already learned the world without him. Motherfucker. The damage doesn't stop with the baby. Research is blunt about what happens to kids when a parent is detained or deported. Anxiety, depression, aggression, and even suicidal thoughts climb in children and teens who experience a parent's arrest or disappearance. The longer the separation, the worse the outcomes. Sarah's older boys are all under 10. They need routine, touch, reassurance, and a parent who's not up all night calculating rent and legal bills and how to answer the question, when's daddy coming home? They want the two-parent family, and they just broke up a two-parent family. How Christian is that for a guy who's here fucking legally? And Yomi won't leave, of course, this untouched. Prolonged detention is consistently linked to anxiety, depression, and PTSD in adults. Look what they did to Aspen in 15 fucking days in Georgia, an American citizen. Symptoms that persist after release. And this study is from before they upped the cruelty. Add in the documented conditions of ICE custody, like the transfers and isolation, heat risks in southern facilities, and basic indignities of being denied showers or bathrooms. You have the blueprint for lifelong trauma, again, which is their point. This is the math that Sarah is forced to do while she feeds her baby and bargains with landlords. Every extra day in detention is not just a court date on the docket. It's a missed smile, a stalled bond, a frightened child, and a father pushed deeper into harm. The fight goes on because it has to. It should not have to at all. This is costing them time, money, years of their life and their savings and their future. Everything this guy had worked for has now got to be blown on this. That's the true cruelty of family separation. Again, it's not just the taking, but the time that can never be returned. The people that can never truly be returned. At the end of the day, they can never truly return to who they were before this. How can they ever feel safe in the United States again? But the love will always be there, and love is stronger than hate at the end of the day. We just have to fight. Yes. But we also have to prosecute these motherfuckers. They have to pay. ICE separates families. Yeah, we know that. As of June, the Brennan Center for Justice, I'm not a fan of them at all, reported over 57,000 people held in ICE detention centers. That is a 51% increase from the year before. So don't tell me how Joe Biden was locking people up now. This is an unprecedented record level of shit. These facilities are operating at over 45% over capacity. Well, we got to build more facilities now, right? No, stop arresting them, motherfuckers. How many of those 57,000 were mothers or fathers? The majority. How many children came home from school to empty houses and backpacks still slung over their shoulders, wondering where their parents went? More than dozens. More than dozens. How many were left crying in the backseat of a car after ICE took their mom or dad during a traffic stop? Too fucking many. According to the American Immigration Council, more than 16.7 million children in the U.S. live with at least one undocumented family member, meaning the scale of risk for separation is huge. Of course, the Millers of the world would say, why are there 16.7 million children living with undocumented family members? There you go. He also knows this, which is why he shared similar statistics and a cryptic message on social media the night Mom Donnie, an immigrant, won the mayoral election in New York City, a threat wrapped in numbers. And that's not an exaggeration, it's the reality. And it's getting worse. ICE has been documented leaving children alone in cars, on the side of the road, and in parking lots after detaining their parents. And then what they do is they charge the parents with child abandonment and child endangerment, as if it's their fault. In Oxnard, California, 2 young children were found crying inside a truck after their father was taken at a gas station. In Massachusetts, a 12-year-old boy was left wandering the street after ICE arrested the adult he was with. These are not isolated incidents. They're routine acts of cruelty dressed up as enforcement. Children have started documenting it themselves. Children! On TikTok, videos circulate of kids coming home from school to empty houses, their parents' belongings scattered where they left them that morning. One girl only learned that her mother had been taken when she saw a video filmed by a bystander showing agents forcing her into their vehicle as she walked to the grocery store. This is not a hypothetical future or a dystopian warning. It's a growing reality unfolding in neighborhoods across America. Children are being stranded, terrified, and forced to grow up in the aftermath of government-sanctioned disappearances. This is fascism. People are putting up posters to show where ICE kidnapped someone because these families only find out their loved ones are gone when they never come home. And while politicians on both sides of the government gave ICE billions for border security, families like Sarah's are being torn apart using these dollars, our tax dollars, one household at a time. Like I said to Brandon Johnson, you motherfuckers funded this. So what can we do? This story is heavy because it has to be. It's a mirror held up to a country that keeps pretending, trying not to see. It may feel draining and dark and hopeless, but that exhaustion is a privilege that Sarah and Yomi and Mahmoud Khalil and Ramesia Ozturk and so many people don't have. Yomi doesn't get to give up. He's chained in a cell hundreds of miles from home. Still not charged with a crime, I'm guessing. Sarah doesn't get to look away. She's feeding a newborn with one arm and fighting for her husband with the other. The least we can do is stand beside them, because every time we stop paying attention, another family disappears. By the way, same thing with Gaza. Every time we lose hope, ICE wins. We don't get to turn our backs. Not when love like theirs is still fighting to survive inside the machine built to destroy it. You can donate to Sarah's GoFundMe, and that's linked here. All right, and yet another fucking GoFundMe, because we don't have enough of those already. I'm going to go through a whole section of that later. You can search online to find and donate to immigrant rights groups in your own community. You can donate to the ACLU who's fighting. You can share this story so other people know. Restack it here on Substack. Share it on social media for sure. And if you can't give money, give time. The only way we get out of this is together. We can't sit around and wait for someone else to fix it. There's always something you can do. Get creative. The goal is simple. Raise awareness, raise funds, and stop this before more children are traumatized and more fathers like Yomi are taken. And if you want to keep up with stories like this, subscribe to Dissent in Bloom. Substack.com. Okay, she covers cases like Sarah and Yomi's from all over the country. She holds the Trump admin and ICE and Noam and Miller accountable. Okay, she writes about the human side, the statistics behind it, and keep doing it, and also election integrity. And the fact that our elections are completely captured, owned, and stolen because the machines are being certified in a black box, and nobody wants to pay attention to that. They would rather just stick their head in the sand and believe that everything is on the up and up. There's Ko-fi. She's got Ko-fi. She's got a monthly subscription that you can subscribe there. All right, if you have the means, that support makes a difference. And it makes a difference over here, too. Support independent media. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Right? Great article. Good stuff. But I mentioned earlier, this happened last week, and I think a lot of people missed it. Borderland Talk with Jenn Budd. Jen used to be a CBP agent who quit and blew the whistle on what she saw. And what she saw was racist chuds everywhere. And we've covered a couple of her articles in the past and a couple of her notes from Substack. She says, Border Patrol achieves its goal of becoming the national police force. And now here's what to expect. What? She said that in 2021, she wrote a piece titled Border Patrol's Dream. Thank you. Border Patrol's dream of becoming a national police force is becoming a reality. Of all the law enforcement agencies in the federal government, this is the most dangerous one to unleash on the country. The Border Patrol questionably asserts the power to stop anyone, regardless of status, enter into anyone's private property, check proof of citizenship, and routinely execute searches without warrants as required by the Fourth Amendment. No other federal agency presumes to have these powers. She says she was called an idiot by the Border Patrol Union, a fearmonger by mainstream media, a disgruntled employee by both the left and the right. But if you were an ex-Border Patrol agent or studied the agency for decades as she has, you would know the history as she wrote in that piece. And she writes, quote, "This was a plan designed and pushed by former Border Patrol Chief David Aguilar to inject CBP into every major national event. That's exactly what the Border Patrol has been doing with the deployment of BORTAC, Border Patrol SWAT-like team, patrolling sanctuary cities and controlling SWAT-like raids on immigrant facilities across the country. Because the Border Patrol claims jurisdiction within 100 miles of all land and border waters, which includes over 2/3 of the population in the United States, everybody's safety is now at risk." She says, "Don't say I didn't warn you." She says, let me make this a little bigger. "I was not in the least bit surprised to see the Associated Press report 2 days ago that Border Patrol would be taking over ICE. The agency had already infiltrated its parent agency, CBP, after Trump took office the second time by placing former Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott as commissioner. Scott has zero experience as a CBP officer, no college degree in management of such a large agency dealing in trade, asylum processing, or the many other jobs required by CBP at our ports of entry. However, as a chief in the Border Patrol, Scott is heavily experienced in bringing in the violence. He knows extensively how to cover up the criminality of his agents. How convenient." In May of 2010, after his agents beat to death a man for demanding medical treatment for an injury caused by an agent, Scott's secret and illegal cover-up team, known as the San Diego Critical Incident Investigative Team, interfered with the San Diego Police Department's homicide investigation of Anastasio Hernandez Rojas. Under Scott's supervision, agents obstructed justice by destroying the video evidence, allowing agents to leave the scene, failing to identify witnesses to the incident, destroying other physical evidence such as taser prongs and the victim's clothing, using an immigration civil subpoena to obtain the medical report, which is not legal, and then refusing to turn that report over to San Diego PD homicide investigators. And yet, no agent was ever held accountable for Anastasio's death. On May 1st, 2025, nearly 15 years after Anastasio was killed, the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights found that, quote, although Mr. Hernandez was taken to the hospital on May 28th at 9:48 p.m., station officials informed the appropriate authorities on May 29th at 2:12. More than 4 hours later, the San Diego Police Department was notified at 12, and the processing of the Whiskey 2 area began at 1:52 p.m. That sounds like a lot of time. Thus, more than 16 hours had passed since the occurrence of the events, and the investigation team went to the crime scene to gather information without any record in the file that the area had been previously secured in order to safeguard the evidence and prevent contamination, because it hadn't. On the contrary, what is established is that prior to this, Border Patrol's critical incident investigation team arrived at the scene. In this regard, the commission has 4 observations to make. 1, it's not clear what legal basis could justify the intervention of this body in the investigation and the excessive use of force resulting in the death of a person. Why are they there? Second, there's no basis in the national legal framework to support this priority access to the crime scene, and no other evidence, such as his medical records. Why are they getting access to that? Third, the state hasn't demonstrated compliance by this body with the aforementioned requirements. They haven't turned anything over. And finally, it's highlighted with concern, strongly worded letter, that the CIIT refrained from forwarding the collected information to the San Diego Police Department, which could represent an obstacle to the investigation whose jurisdiction is not in dispute. While you will not find much reporting on this astounding IHCR report in American media, the U.S. is a participating partner within the commission and often uses it to condemn other countries for their human rights abuses. How convenient. Here's another one on September 28, 2012. Chief Scott struck again with another cover-up. This time, his illegal cover-up team was unavailable. Fortunately for him, orders were given for the San Diego Sector Intelligence Unit to round up witnesses. Scott himself rushed to the scene in Chula Vista, where one of his agents, in plain clothes without identification visible, shot a U.S. citizen and a mother of 5. Valeria Taquiquin was killed instantly when Border Patrol agent Justin Tackett unloaded 10 bullets into her upper body as she sat in a car. She was unarmed and was trying to get away from this unknown man who continually placed himself in front of her car to block her. Chief Scott stood before cameras immediately after the killing and before any investigation had commenced to claim she had tried to run Agent Tackett over. Yet witnesses came forward and stated Tackett was firing from a standing position, and other agents placed witnesses in their cars to prevent them from speaking with Chula Vista Police Department investigators. Go figure. After the incident, Chief Scott and Border Patrol press information officers leaked out as much investigative information as they could find about Valeria's past, because that's what they do, smear the victim. But when 10 local news discovered Agent Tackett's long history of abuse and violating people's rights that extended all the way back to his days working for the Imperial County Sheriff's Office as a deputy, Border Patrol suddenly stopped talking. They didn't want to influence the case. How convenient. Still, the CIIT and intelligence unit did their job, and Agent Tackett was transferred to Tucson sector to continue wearing the green uniform, and again, no one was held accountable. Rodney Scott, who is again now taking over ICE, embodies the culture of U.S. Border Patrol. the agents selected to take over ICE, whomever they are, do as well. One can't rise to these ranks without being willing to cover up the crimes of Border Patrol agents. Using the cover-up teams that are now housed under CBP's Office of Professional Responsibility, the OPR, and knowing to call them in first before the real use of force investigators arrive is standard operating procedure within the agency. In over 101 years, no Border Patrol agent has successfully been prosecuted for killing a person while on duty. That's disgusting. What Americans are witnessing in their neighborhoods is the Border Patrolification of the immigration agencies. On the southern border, every single night, in multiple sectors, agents perform dangerous pursuits and illegal PIT maneuvers, ramming cars they suspect may have undocumented persons. They spike vehicles driving at high speeds, even though training says it can cause fatal rollovers. Again, that's their point. They bust out windows of cars without ever asking anyone's citizenship and then shoot the drivers as they run alongside the car. They chase them into known dangerous corners, into rivers, canals, and other innocent cars just coming home from work. All for a crime of crossing the border without inspection, which is a misdemeanor. All of this is just punitive. And it's attacking people that are brown. That usually we fucking did something to their hometown, their home country, that caused them to need to come here. Trump trusts the Border Patrol, and they love him. Their union was responsible for delivering his message of open borders, which there never have been, and escorting right-wing media to every apprehension they could find prior to Trump taking office a second time. Even for creating some fake crossings, and there's a link to that. Yes, they manufacture crossings that they then can show that they're busting, but this is all theater. This was all an attempt to make Americans believe there was a migrant invasion occurring, when in reality it was caused by Trump and the Border Patrol's own policies of shuttering the legal asylum system. Remember, they closed the borders the last time Trump was president. Closing legal avenues forces people to cross illegally every time. It was not an invasion, but CBP refusing to process people. They were keeping hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of people in Mexico. People who were genuinely seeking asylum the legal way. But he ended asylum effectively. Wouldn't grant it. So she says here, again, this is Jenn Budd, Border Patrol. All right, Borderland Talk with Jenn Budd. Jenn Budd, JENNBUDDs.substack.com. It's important to understand the cultural differences between ICE, CBP, and the Border Patrol. ICE normally targets those with criminal warrants and records, or at least in the past. They're investigators and are supposed to build cases with probable cause and evidence for judges to consider if someone should be deported. They are by no means honorable, but that is their intended purpose. They're also knowing that judges are basically doing whatever they are suggesting anyway and aren't really asking hard questions. Or they're just attacking the judges. When it comes to immigration enforcement, CBP processes asylum seekers and other varieties of people seeking legal entry in the U.S. It is a much more controlled environment at the ports of entry, and one in which the officers have an immense amount of authority over those seeking entry. Border Patrol is looked down upon by both ICE and CBP as the thugs of immigration, which is funny. She said, in my day, we were called the butthole of the federal service. The agency is known for hiring people with criminal records, including child sexual assault, DUIs, cops in the process of being removed from other agencies, those with cartel ties, and even undocumented applicants, which is hilarious. And all of those, by the way, she has links and receipts to. So I'm not just saying that. Border Patrol is the agency doing the violent ripping of children from their parents. The dangerous high-speed chases that not only harm migrants, but kill and forever disable many innocent Americans. The deterrence policies where we purposefully push migrants, not allowed to do it the legal way, out to the most lethal terrain to cross, fully aware that they'll likely die or suffer severe amounts of physical and emotional trauma. Again, that's their point. If you're going to do it, you're going to pay the price. The Border Patrol, different from CBP, is the law enforcement of the Wild West. It's where politicians don't care what we do because migrants can't vote, nor do they donate to political campaigns, which makes them the perfect scapegoats. It's where agents can sexually abuse their own children and be working for a Border Patrol contractor before they're even sentenced to lifetime probation. Yeah, that happened. It's where they can be caught on video committing the exact same allegations made against them, and then they're acquitted. It's where Rodney Scott can order the tear gassing of women and children seeking asylum as they stand in Mexico without repercussions, just for the hell of it. It's where agents know that their chiefs will ensure the cover-up teams will botch the evidence, identification, and collection so badly that juries can't convict them when they reach into Mexico and put 10 bullets in the back of a child as he walks down the street. Everything you are seeing in your cities and neighborhoods has occurred down here on the southern border for generations. The beatings, the tasings, the less than lethal ammunition assaults, ramming, spiking, PIT maneuvers, guns in your face. That's the Border Patrol Jen knows and remembers well. It's done in the most desolate of places, on the spider webs of dirt roads, on the little 2-lane highways that are mostly empty. It's what she wrote about extensively in her memoir. If she were a high-ranking ICE or CBP officer, she would see this as a hostile takeover. She would be offended that the administration trusts Border Patrol agents more than it trusts them. The Border Patrol has just reached their goal as the national police force. With their management and control of ICE and CBP, they not only control in between the ports, they now control the ports themselves, the deportations, and CBP's vast surveillance of Americans, by the way. They're Trump's private and secret police. They answer to no one. Trump can trust the Border Patrol will violate Americans' constitutional rights because they've always done so. And she closes by saying, "Buckle up, buttercups. The violence has just begun." Again, not really a pleasant article here. Thank you to everyone who's here hanging out. Good to see you all at IndieNewsNow Live. Yes, we are now IndieNewsNow Live. How do we miss that? Is being put out to pasture, or evolving, actually, because we have our news website and we're tying the name into the news website. So fuck ICE, man. Holy crap. I mean, did you know that about this whole CBP, ICE, Border Patrol, the difference between them? I certainly did not. It's really interesting to see. Again, this is Indie News Now Live. Appreciate everybody checking this out. This is the first episode of the new version of this show. Before I continue, I do want to ask you to support independent media if you're able to and a means. The ways to do that are the same as always. Cash App, $, Indie News Network. That goes right to my phone. $, Indie News Network. Ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. We got paypal.me/Indie News Network. Do that as friends and family. All right. Then we've got, again, at the Indie News Now website that we are live at right now, there is a tab to keep the news free, and you can donate via Stripe. And then we've got over at Substack, INNnewsletter.com, where we publish weekly update and more, and where we are live now at IndieMediaToday.com. And again, good to see everybody over there. Thank you so much, really, for supporting independent media and for hanging out. We're gonna do this every Tuesday night now at 10 p.m. Eastern. We're just shifting. So for those who weren't here earlier, like Vicky, and it's in the description, but How Do We Miss That is evolving. You know, I took a look around at the landscape and I said, you know, as a show name, it's been around for 4 years. We never really named the show. It kind of evolved into its own name, but I never actively decided that this is what I want to call it. But because we're using articles from IndieNewsNow, I think it makes a lot of sense to brand IndieNewsNow and link the website into the show name. So it's called IndieNewsNow Live. And I've been wanting to do a show kind of by myself, a news show. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to see how this goes. Again, Thursday nights, you're going to see a mix of shows. You're going to see a combination of either INN one-on-one. You're going to see Indie's Tech Tips, which I'm going to do shows of, and we're going to talk about the tools. We're going to do some more Nobody Wants to Work Anymore, and there might even be one on Thursday with me and Himbo. And, of course, American Tradition, which will be the last Thursday of every month. We've kind of tried to set on that as a schedule. So thank you, everybody, again, for supporting this move. Tell everyone about Indie News Now and about Indie News Now Live. I really think that it might help give us a little bit of a boost because we certainly could use one. The algorithm doesn't love us. Boats, by the way, will be moving to 11 p.m. on Sunday nights. So we are still going to do boats. It's going to happen on Sunday night. And the last Sunday of every month will still be an uncensored boats. But the truth is that I can't continue to stay up as late as I've been staying on Sunday nights, especially. And I've got to start working on my schedule. So spreading this out a little bit better seems to make more sense, at least for me. And we're going to try this and see how it goes. And thank you, everybody, for being on board and supporting that. So I will, again, say to support independent media because we need it more than ever. And we will see you next Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m., check out INN News with Reef and Colin. And we'll see you again real soon. Love you all, fam. No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say?